Hello everyone. I thought I'd do a full video on my Lophophora collection. I'm going to show you everything I have, pretty much. I have some seedlings germinating in Tupperware jars, but I'm not going to count those. These are all of my like outside, developed plants. So start off with one of my main centerpieces here. This is a Freecii or Freecii. I don't know how it's pronounced, but big old cluster, one of my favorite plants. Um, Originally a grafted plant that was then degrafted. So grafting allows you to get a much bigger plant a lot quicker. Ordinarily, a plant this age would be like less than half the size, not as many pups. But grafting, and I'll show you some other plants that are currently grafted to kind of show you what I mean. Um, But these are all Freecii right here. This is like a contested species. It's not sure if it's its own thing or if it's diffusa or Williamsii. Williamsii is like so right now it's considered like the scientific community at large. Like nothing's been set in stone right now, but the current consensus, like if you read most books and stuff, is that there's only two species. There's Williamsii and there's diffusa, but there's a bunch of other different varieties, and we're not exactly sure if they're their own thing or if they're regional subspecies or cultivars or whatever. But yeah, so here's a few more Freecii. In the back there, these are all hard grown, so they're gonna have might damage and whatnot. That's what happens. I started giving SNS 209, and I haven't seen any mites since, and they're starting to grow out of the damage, which is nice. I really like SNS 209. It's a nice little systemic, all natural, and doesn't affect anything with the plants. Um, Here is a Williamsii caspitosa. So caspitosa is basically a variety, or it's a growth pattern basically. It's a way that they can grow. So rather than the main button just like focusing on getting size and flowering and reproducing that way, caspitosa grow many little heads. It takes longer for the middle head to take size. It spreads kind of like a carpet rather than relying on seeds and stuff. It makes little clones of itself and just spreads along the ground. Here's another caspitosa. Now this Freecii isn't a caspitosa. It just has a lot of pups because it was grafted. So the way you can tell a caspitosa from just something with a lot of pups, see how all these pups pretty much sprouted at the same time. They're all around the same size, you know. But when you look at these caspitosa, many pups in different places, all different sizes and whatnot. It's going to be like that for a lot of caspitosa, and I have more on the bottom shelf I'll show you. Um, Here is a Williamsii, an adult flowering age plant. As you can see, Lophophora, rather than growing spines, they can grow spines, very, very tiny ones, but most of the time they grow little tufts of hair instead, which I think is really cute. So I'll show you the grafted plants. Here's one Williamsii grafted onto a San Pedro. So there you have, it was just a little seedling, but it is gaining size very quickly because it was grafted on top of, basically you cut the head off of a fast growing cactus and you glue on, not literally with glue, but you surgically attach the head of another cactus, and the San Pedro acts as the roots and it feeds this a lot quicker. So the top part is technically called the scion. It feeds the scion a lot quicker than if it was just on its own roots. Here's another one. Again, usually when they're this tiny, they do not have the tufts of hair, or when they're this young, but this is a grafted plant, so it is growing significantly faster than if it was on its own roots. That's the top shelf. Top shelf is mostly bigger guys and bigger pots, but here's the bottom shelf. Have a bunch more. The bottom shelf is all Williamsii, pretty much. Here we have some more flowering age plants. Very cool. And I guess I'll talk a little bit more about how they like to be cared for. Williamsii and, well, Lophophora in general, um, they are cactus and they are from a desert type area, but a lot of people think that because of that they need lots of light, or they like lots of light. They like it dry and with lots of light, and that is not really the case. These guys typically grow in the shade. They grow at the base of trees, beneath and beside shrubs, in between rock crevices and stuff. So they really don't get blasted with full sun most of the day in the wild. In fact, if you put them in full sun, a lot of the times they will burn quite easily. Not to say that they can't be adjusted to tolerate more light, but generally speaking, they do not love being just blasted with full sunlight all day. I keep mine under shade cloth most of the day. I just took the shade cloth off because I'm filming this video, obviously. But most of the day, they are under the shade cloth. These are a bunch of little guys, some Texana started from seed. I have some more. This is a flowering age Case Betosa. Another smaller Case Betosa. Some more smaller flowering age plants. Here are some really cool ones. A lot of people who take these for or who grow these for like the medicinal and ceremonial purposes, totally fine, nothing wrong with that. I mostly just have them just because I think they're cool. I have partaken in ceremony in the past though, but these just take so long to grow and I've become attached to them, so I'm really not all that interested in harvesting them for their ceremonial purposes. Although it is very cool, I do recommend trying some sort of psychedelic experience at some point. It's just these are such a time and love effort that I would never really want to turn them into the tea. But especially these, like these are variegated Case Betosa. Basically what's up with these is they have a mutation that causes them to not have as much chlorophyll in some parts, which is why they get that yellow color. It's kind of like albinism in animals, but, you know, a little bit different because the pigmenting in plants, the green pigment, chlorophyll is like, you know, how they make energy. So they're a little bit more inefficient than regular plants, so they need a little bit more care. They'll also burn easier than these other plants. But they're just very cool. I would never use these for ceremony. They're just like, you know, decorative, purely decorative. And the Freechii up here, the Freechii, they do not contain any mescaline, or they do have other alkaloids, but very, very low to no mescaline, so not typically used for ceremony. The other alkaloids in them are used as like medicine by the natives, but nothing like, you know, psychedelic or anything like that. But yeah, very, very cool plants. As far as their care goes, this soil is mostly inorganic. I do have some worm castings and stuff mixed in here, but it's mostly pulverized limestone, granite, pumice, agrocarpus, you know, that kind of thing. And then I do mix a little bit of worm castings in there for them, for nitrogen, as like a slow release fertilizer for them. Watering during the dry season here, or during the summer, the growth season, I water them about every 2 weeks just because it is hot out here, and with this soil they do dry out rather quickly. You kind of have to adjust your watering based on the type of medium that you're keeping them in. If you're keeping them in something that takes longer to dry out, then obviously you're not going to want to water them as often. During the wintertime, I don't really water them at all. Like when it's cold out, you want to avoid that. They are kept outside. I'm in California, so, you know, I am able to keep them outside. They'll tolerate temperatures down to freezing, but not much lower than that, but only if their soil is dry. If you have wet soil and it's cold, that is a bad combination. I do not recommend doing that. So during the winter, I don't water them. Some people during the summer, even during the growth period, they only water them once a month or something like that, which is fine. You know, it depends on your growth medium. Also, how much you're feeding them, if you're giving fertilizer, how quickly you want them to grow, because sometimes if you overwater them, besides the risk of like root rot or something like that, they can also just split open. They can gets so filled with water that they just split open. It doesn't kill them, it just, creates scars and stuff, and it's kind of unsightly for some people. As far as the legality of owning these, it really depends on your local jurisdiction. There are a few places in the country where they are legal to own, like in Colorado and California. There are jurisdictions, as well as in Texas. There are also exceptions made for religious purposes, like if you're part of the Native American church, you can have these. For the Williamsii, for the diffusa and Freecii, I'm pretty sure there's no rules against them because they do not have any active qualities, and I don't think they're as heavily poached as Williamsii, which is another thing I recommend. If you want to get one of these, do not take them from the wild or get them from some unscrupulous seller somewhere on the side of a road in Mexico, because they're probably poached. Or don't get them on eBay or something like that, some random online seller. I recommend finding somebody who already has a flowering age plant. There's groups online and stuff like that, and getting seeds from them. So that way we are sustainably raising up these amazing plants, so that way we don't have to worry about them disappearing in the wild. It also makes a much better case for us to be able to have them if we're growing them ourselves and not poaching them. Propagation is a good thing, and we should make ourselves look good so that way the government will allow us to propagate these plants, because that is the future. And I believe plants like this and other substances like this will be very important in the future. We're going through a second wave where these types of substances are being given a second look without as much criticism or demonization. And yeah, they're just really cool. So I hope you guys learned something. If you have any other questions, feel free to ask them in the comments. And I'm happy to talk about how I take care of them and stuff like that. Just don't ask me to sell plants or to sell you plants or stuff like that. I don't do that kind of thing through YouTube. So yeah, have a good night and happy plant keeping.